Hello, Assalamu alaikum everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound, and healthy. And I'm back because there are a few things that I think need to be addressed pertaining to our life as Muslims, pertaining to the understanding of Islam. As always, there's this trend that erupts every few years where people, try to look into very tiny, tiny things and say, oh, in Islam, this is not how you're supposed to do. In Islam, this is not how you're supposed. Remember one thing, especially all the new Muslims who, or all those who want to be Muslims and are trying to understand the deepest, smallest nuances of religion. First of all, just understand that Islam is basically a religion of common sense. The reason we call it's a way of living is because the whole point of this religion is to be able to just live with common sense. So anything that makes life easier and practical is the approach that Islam encourages you to take. Okay? For example, number one, all things that are haram in Islam, when it comes to eating especially, they are haram, but at the same time they're makruh. The reason being that nothing is above human life. So when it comes to life and death situations, then those things that in your normal daily lives would be haram will now be permissible. But again, it has to be an extreme life and death situation. Similarly, common sense prevails in your regular life as well. For example, there is a reason why you can do dry ablution, which we call tayammum, right? This is not just on a life and death situation. You can do tayammum if there's no water available, or if, for example, it's extremely cold, you have no access to hot water, and you're in a situation where you know cold water is only going to make you sick because maybe you're already very sick and the water is freezing, and you just cannot, or maybe the water has some sort of, you know, um, problem or issues, yes, you can do dry ablution. Okay, there is no life and death situation here. The whole point of the yammum is when there's no access to water, or when you are sure that you are not in the position to use water. Okay. Similarly, even though you know that you're supposed to thoroughly cleanse your nostrils during ablution, but if you know that, for example, the water that you're using may have bacteria, or it may have some virus, or it may not be exactly clean, then Islam will not encourage you to shove that water deep into your nostrils and create more problems. No. So again, it's all about common sense. Okay, just use your common sense. That's all you need to do every time you come across such weird situations, okay? Because they're weird situations for a reason, right? It's not about everyday life situations. It's about these little weird situations that occur in your everyday life, okay? So again, in Islam, the core foundation of Islam is actions are judged by intentions, right? That means, now, for example, you will find a lot of these people who suddenly start going to all these darses. Dars is this, to me, weird ass social gathering that people have started. They were doing it for years in societies like the subcontinent, where they think that, oh, you get together, you learn a bit about Islam, you learn a bit about hadith, you learn a bit, and at the end of the day, it's just an excuse for women to get together and socialize. So, and they feel that they're doing a good thing while there's one person teaching them about Islam, but at the same time they're getting this, which again, there's no harm. Again, there's no harm, but the harm begins when you do not gain the right kind of knowledge, or when you start confusing already educated women regarding Islamic knowledge. So, as I said, in Islam, there is this hadith of the Prophet which I keep on and on quoting every time I come across women who uh, get inspired, not just women, but even boys and girls or anybody who want to learn about religion, and then they start following a certain scholar because it's okay to try to understand religion by listening to scholars, and it's understandable that there's one scholar that you will listen more to than the others. But you see, the whole point of Islam, understanding Islam, is you need to read the Quran yourself. You need to read the hadith yourself. None of these come without explanations or without details or without footnotes. Okay. You only then, go to other scholars and listen to them and all when you want to get deeper understanding. I understand that. But in Islam, following any scholar or any monk or any priest or any Maulvi blindly it's shirk. According to the Prophet, it's plain shirk. As I said just now a few minutes ago, that there's this hadith that I keep on and on quoting when it comes to these things. The Prophet said to a companion of his that, I fear that my Muslim Ummah would end up like the Christians and the Jews, where they would worship their monks and their priests. And the companion got really confused and concerned. He's like, no, they're not worshiping them. They're asking them for religious guidance because they're supposed to have that knowledge, the monks and the priests. And the Prophet said, tell me one thing. If something is allowed by divine law, if God has permitted it, but the monks and the priests will say, no, it's not permissible, the people will listen to the monks and priests and say it's not permissible, right? The companion said, right. And the Prophet said, okay, and if something is not permissible by divine law, but the monks and the priests would say it's permissible, the people will accept that and have it as permissible. The companion's like, right. The Prophet said, so that's shirk. Because instead of listening to the actual divine law, they're listening to those people who are telling them that something that is permissible is actually not, and something that's not permissible is actually permissible. So they're following those monks and priests blindly instead of following the actual law. So they are committing shirk. And as we know, shirk is that one sin that God cannot forgive. Now, people have moved on to, this talking about paintings and statues and busts, and saying that, oh, you should not have pictures and you should not have paintings and you should not have masks, wooden masks, artifacts in your house, because then your prayers are rendered invalid, because it's like you're worshiping them. And you see, now this is where the whole jahliyat, or ignorance, or lack of education, or lack of actual understanding of Islam comes, is that so it's okay for you to listen blindly to a religious scholar and follow him instead of reading the actual Quran and the Hadith. But it's not okay to have paintings and pictures and handicrafts. By handicrafts, I shouldn't say handicrafts. Or I'm talking about wooden masks that are made, that are cultural. For example, in the African culture, in the West African culture, you see all these masks that they make and all. And people are like, oh, they use these masks for voodoo, for example, or they use these masks for, idol worshipping. And so if you put any statues or statuettes or busts or pictures or paintings or any such things, that can, I understand again where this is coming from. But again, actions are judged by intentions. And in Islam, when your whole point of being a Muslim is you believe in no God but Allah, why would you regard any statue or any tiny piece of statuette or any art piece or any wooden carving or any painting or any picture as part of idol worshipping? First of all, I don't get that. See, again, pictures. This is the one controversy I really do not understand, why this myth is still ongoing. This myth stemmed from an ignorant society, and I don't know why this myth continues despite the fact that the whole world has embraced photography and the whole world has embraced, um, you know, art, as in drawing, fine art, paintings. But still, there's always this little hint of, a murmur, a whisper in every society, in every country that comes, with these weird superstitions and myths. Again, you do realize that the original intention of making portraits or making pictures or making paintings or drawing or sketching was to put something on the record, right? Similarly, the original intention, and even now, the ongoing intention, the actual, foundation behind photography is keeping something on the record. Photography was a more, you can say, advanced form of preserving records in a much better form than painting or portrait. For example, in the police department, when they needed to draw the picture of a wanted suspect or of a victim or something, or in the courts, when, even today, despite photography, despite videography, you still have sketchers in court who are literally drawing the whole scene by hand. This is for record. So the whole purpose, even today, as we can see it in many forms, even today, the whole purpose, the whole point of sketching, of drawing, of painting, of recording, of photography, you see, this is all to basically put something on the record. It's to keep something on the record for memory's sake or for any other sake, but it's literally to stamp a memory in a visual form. That's why we call it recording. When we make a video, what was the original word we used to use for it? We're recording something. What is to record something? Is to put something in a memory, to put something on the record that you can refer to again and again if ever needed, right? It's stamping your memories in visual form. It's as simple as that. So when you have pictures, for example, of your family or of people, or if you have portraits and all, I'm sorry, but that has nothing to do with idol worshipping. And it doesn't render your prayer invalid unless you yourself are of a superstitious nature and you feel that way. Then that's a different, then yeah, okay, maybe you should remove everything, But to say that, your prayer is rendered invalid if you're praying in a room where there are art pieces of the sort, where there are portraits and pictures, or where there are paintings, or where there are these wood carvings, I'm sorry, but it doesn't make sense. As a Muslim, it just doesn't make sense, because as a Muslim, these things don't even have any meaning. To a Muslim, these things don't have meaning, right? I mean, I don't get it. If something is made for the purpose of idol worshipping and you have it in your home, then yes, I would agree. For example, if you have a Hindu god's statue or bust, or if you have, something that is purely of religious meaning in your house, and that religious meaning is to do with their idol worship, then yes, then that will 100% render your prayer void if you pray anywhere in front of that, or if that thing is in front of you or in that vicinity. Yes, in fact, that thing is not even supposed to be in your home in the first place. What kind of a Muslim would put a Hindu god, for example, in his home? That is equivalent to accepting idol worshipping. Yes, that will render the whole namaz, the whole prayer void. Yes. And that is why in no Muslim's home will you find these things. You wouldn't even find a statue of Buddha in a Muslim home. For a reason. Because these are those statues that are made for the purpose of worship. So yes. But again, I would say it. Art pieces, handicraft pieces, or wood carving. I keep on saying handicraft, but I mean seriously, wood carving pieces, masks that have no meaning to you whatsoever, yeah. But again, as I said, if you feel uncomfortable, don't pray in that room, okay? But again, as you know, in Islam, we are encouraged to pray in almost every room of the house, not just one bedroom. So there is no concept of a prayer room, even though I know nowadays there's this trend where people tend to make a prayer room in their homes as well so that they can have a dedicated space to pray. But no, in Islam, you're supposed to actually keep every room filled with the blessings of prayers. In other words, you pray in your bedrooms, you can pray in the TV lounge, pray in your drawing room, you know. Yeah. So if you have a living room, or a drawing room, if you have a TV lounge, if you have a study room, if you have your bedrooms, pray in those rooms, you know. Um, that's you're supposed to keep the whole house sort of blessed, you know. But again, it really doesn't matter. Again, these are the things, as I said, they're just personal, little things that are personal to you. You want to do it. You don't want to do it, don't do it. You understand? You want to just pray only in one room of the house, and you want a dedicated prayer room because it makes you feel that you have a completely neat, clean space that nothing has ever touched, and it's perfect and pure for praying. Go ahead, whatever makes you easy. As I said, Islam is a practical religion. It's all about what makes you feel easy. If you're uneasy about something, Islam encourages you to just don't do it. Just leave it. You understand? In fact, as the Prophet also said, that if there is a tussle between your mind and your heart, go for your heart. And as you know, as in the latest science, medical science has, the latest medical science research has now discovered the heart is in itself a sort of a separate brain. So it's not just your brain that's a brain, but your heart also seems to send its own messages and signals, you know. So, yes, now they've started to understand why in our religion, we're not just our religion, but I mean, I would put it this way. Have you noticed how even those who have left the monotheism practices, but still that age old, that really, really age old, ancient speech of which we always have, in which we always talk about the heart, that is never forgotten. I've noticed this, and I've tried to speak about this in many different ways. That has anybody ever noticed how, despite the fact that many cultures, many civilizations have deviated from the original message of Islam, you can say. They may have deviated into paganism, they may have deviated into other, religions, they may have deviated into, various sort of religious practices or beliefs or whatever. They may have forgotten the original message of God. But there are so many things that I've seen that the ancient cultures kept, so many parts of the original message that they kept and practiced, and they sent it down to their generations. And many of those practices were literally, if the chain was broken, it was broken by the colonialism, by the Europeans, who themselves, by the way, also in their own ancient cultures followed some of those practices. So if you even look at some of the very ethnic groups all over the world, you will see that many of them are still following certain practices. You know, for example, the lunar calendar. Okay, the Chinese may have, changed the lunar calendar to putting it in a different way and using the year of animals, and, and using those as their zodiacs, and their, the year of the rat and the year of the monkey and all. Okay, forget that. But again, even the traditional Indian calendar is lunar based. So, but again, we have different months and different uh, but same as with Japan, same as with Korea. But again, if you look at the ancient Celtic calendar, it's lunar. So you see where I'm going with that. The original calendar, which is lunar, which is also in the Islamic calendar, which is lunar. Notice that many ancient cultures somehow continued that lunar calendar. You know, the Gregorian calendar came later on from, Europe, right? But the ancient Europe calendar was also, as I said, lunar. So notice that. Notice that the lunar calendar continued despite the fact that people deviated from the original message. They deviated from monotheism. They deviated from, everything else. But that message continued. That little practice, you could say, that practice continued. So similarly, you know, these little practices, these little beliefs that people seem to have kept. For example, again, if you look at the Native American tribes, some of their practices also seem to be linked to the original Islamic practice. The fact that the importance that was, or respect that was given to women, or still is in their tribes. You see that respect given to women in many ancient or many older tribes or civilizations that have still somehow managed to keep their practices. But you don't see it in the modern world. But you see it heavily in Islam, practiced in Islam, but you don't see it in the modern world. You don't even see it in the modern Muslim world, because as I keep on and on reminding everyone, the modern Muslim world is not an actual Muslim world either. It is post-colonial Muslim world. So you see where the damage was done. The damage was done by colonialism. So colonialism brought this, mistreatment of women, or designating women to a second class, which in Islam is not even allowed and was never the practice. In the original Islamic society, it was never a practice. In the original Islamic society, women were given a higher status. They were given a privilege. They were in the Quran, as you see, men and women are equally talked to. They're mentioned equally. They're named equally. They're called equally. They're advised equally. They're commanded equally. Every man and woman, every man and women, every man and women. Muslim men and women, believing men and women. Men and women of the faith. So it's recurring. This is a recurring theme in the Quran. So yeah. Similarly, like the Prophet said that getting an education and gaining knowledge is an obligation of every Muslim man and woman. Period. No question there. It's an undisputed fact that education is an obligation. Marriage, which is treated as an obligation in most civilizations and cultures, Muslim and non-Muslim, is actually not an obligation in Islam. So that's another thing that really digs, it's something that makes me very, very annoyed when people talk about that. I'm like, why can't people just get, again, this just shows the hypocrisy of people and the hypocrisy of our society, where you're bringing your culture, you're putting your culture above your religion, because in your culture, marriage is as good as an obligation. But your religion has marked education as obligation. But your culture never marked education as obligation. So you see here, this is where the clash occurs. This is where the hypocrisy occurs. This is where you're going against the core of Islam when you give precedence to your culture over the teachings of Islam. So again, you're kind of committing a sort of a shirk here again, because you are going against the word of God and you're bringing in the word of your forefathers or your culture blindly, right? So in Islam, marriage is a sunnah. And there are so many conditions laid out there, to get to for marriage. First of all, it cannot be arranged. But because in our cultures, in many Eastern cultures, which were originally pagan cultures, arranged marriages were given, were considered pure. And and it's very it's really strange. Have you noticed how our culture is always celebrating romance? We're always celebrating romance, but arranged marriages are supposed to be the, the key here. I mean, I know in the modern where more awareness has come, more Islamic awareness has come, so people have understood, you know much better now, that no, arranged marriages are actually not allowed in Islam. In Islam, the girl and the boy need to know each other. They need to accept each other in order for that marriage to take place. And if it, because the Prophet literally invalidated arranged marriages, even though the women were happy. But the fact that they were not asked before marriage and the fact that their parents arranged those marriages, that is what rendered their marriages void, according to the Prophet. So he said, you can get married again if you're happy, get married by choice. But this that is going on, this is not marriage. In fact, in Islam, arranged marriages in which the consent of the boy and the girl is not taken properly, that is referred to as an adultery. Yes, it's not a marriage, it is an adultery. So you're basically forcing your children to commit adultery, basically. And obviously, the sin will go on the parents, mind you. The responsibility of that, is on the parents. Just like how the responsibility of a child going bad because he has lived in an abusive environment goes to the parents. But if that child turns out to be good, the credit is all his or hers. It doesn't go to the parents. So that's another misconception that parents, again, seem to have in societies like ours, which again is because our societies have been predominantly, we're still following our pagan culture, and those in that pagan culture, parents seem to be next to God. In Islam, parents are not actually next to God. No, look, they may have top respect in this world, but they're definitely not next to God. They do have their punishments. They do have their limits. They do have their restrictions that they have to follow. So, yeah, no, that's not how it works in Islam. In Islam, there is justice, a system of justice. It takes precedence over everything. So, although, we always hear these religious scholars saying that, oh, in Islam, you're never even supposed to say oof to your parents when they, yes, you're never supposed to say oof to your parents. But again, if you live in an environment where your parents are always abusive towards you, where your parents are always hurting your feelings, where your parents have rendered you to be psychologically crippled, where your parents have made your life so, I mean, they're so toxic. Your life is so toxic because of your parents, then yeah, you're not required to actually even be obedient. uh, to be This is the real bitter true Islam, which people don't want you to know, but it is true. You are actually encouraged to get away from them if you can, to preserve your mental health, and to stop yourself from going down that path of more toxicity or of retaliation to the point where you find yourself becoming more violent, maybe. So Islam encourages you to just cut off. Yes, believe it or not, Islam does encourage you to cut off from toxic families, toxic parents. Okay, because in the long run, what is good for your mental health and what is going to help you remain calm, what is going to help you have a good life, a peaceful mind, so that you can stay on the straight path, that is more important, rather than you forcing yourself through some myth and superstition to to live with a toxic family member or with toxic parents, and and serve them. Yeah, because in Islam this is also made very clear that even if you do end up being a good person despite all that, despite the toxic environment, but you ignore your parents, then there is no punishment. There is no punishment for that, because God understands that you're basically just reacting to all that toxicity, and you're ignoring them because you've become, as a victim of theirs, you are in that mental frame of mind where it just doesn't allow you you just don't feel like, doing anything for them anymore. But you're not being bad to them, you're not hurting them, but you're also just not, in their service, basically. You're not always there doing their jihuzuri, and you're not serving them, and you've decided to just ignore them and stay away from them. Then there, as it is mentioned very clearly in the hadith, that there is, you won't be asked about that. You won't be punished for that. It's your right to keep your mind in a good place. And you're not obliged, in other words, yes, you're not obliged to take care of those people who have given you nothing but pain and violence and abuse. You're not obliged. But in hypocritical societies like ours, where we give precedence to culture, to our pagan culture, we start acting as if, oh, it's such a huge sin. And then, just to serve our purpose, we, like the devil, we quote the Quran and we quote hadith, and we say, oh, you're supposed to take care of your parents because your parents are this and no, you see, again, in Islam, it is also very clearly mentioned what the criteria of parenting is, and that those who do not fulfill that criteria don't come under those. So you see, again, as I said, Islam is all about common sense, and it's about justice. You just have to use your common sense. And what you can actually see is right, it really is right. And if you think something is wrong, it really is wrong. Okay. I do understand that now, in this case, many people might say, oh, but for example, if we think that, there are certain things are right, but they actually are wrong even in Islam. Those are completely different things. You're talking about abnormalities. You're talking about things that God has said in black and white are wrong. You're talking about sins and crimes that Quran and the Hadith have mentioned very clearly as wrong. And if you're trying to say, oh, but we think they're right, no, that's absolutely wrong. That is not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is your everyday common sense and your everyday sense of what is right and what is wrong regarding how people treat you and how you're expected to treat them in return. For example, if you're afraid that living with toxic parents is only going to make you more and more violent even one day, that you think that you may end up hurting them, in fact, because your grudge and your grievance is growing day by day because you're stuck in that gutter, then, as I said, it's common sense that you leave for your own mental health. Because in Islam, your mental health and anything that can stop you from going down a violent path or going down a brutal path or going down a path that can make you a path that can make you more miserable, you're discouraged from going down that path, basically. Okay, you need to get away from it. And this is why, as you notice, this is also part of Psychology 101. If you want to cure depression, leave the place. It doesn't mean leave the place with the same people who are the source of your depression. If you're constantly staying with the source of your depression, you will never heal. The whole point of change of scenery or change of place or change of pace means leaving the people, leaving the faces, leaving the places that are bogging you down. A fresh start means getting away from those faces, from those people, from those places. So I don't understand when people say that, oh, they're in such depression, so we're thinking, let's take them and travel. They're in depression, you're taking them and you're thinking you should travel, but you're still there with them. How's that helping them? Has it ever entered your mind that you being with them is no change? Change must be complete in order for it to be effective. Complete change, it means leaving behind everyone, not just the place, but leaving behind the people. That is the only way you can actually get change, And that is how you can make change. And that is how your mind gets something new. As long as you're around the same people, the same faces, it doesn't matter where you are, nothing's changed. This is what I never understood, why it doesn't get into anybody's thick skull. when families are like, oh, he or she is depressed, and we're thinking we should take them away from here. Take them away? Can you please leave that person alone? Because that in itself is going to make a huge change. It doesn't matter where that person is, as long as he's around the same faces, he's not getting any change. Anyway, so here's that. Now, here's another thing that I really need to make very clear. In Islam, especially nowadays when it comes to all these, debate about different laws of different countries and all. See, in Islam, a Muslim is told to follow the law of the country he lives in. And believe me, there is no country that makes laws that will ever go against Islam in any way. First of all, because the modern uh, global community is founded on Islamic law, like it or not, believe it or not. This is a fact, this is on the record fact. In Europe, they follow the Umayyad system. In America, they follow the Muhammadan system. Even in North Asia, in East Asia, even in Africa, any and every country that has a modern legal infrastructure, right, that is based, it's all based on the Islamic legal structure, okay? So believe me, wherever you go, there is no place where a law is going to tell you that the crime that you're committing is not a crime. If it's a crime everywhere in the world, okay? When it comes to moral sins, that has nothing to do with the law anyway. That is a personal thing. And that is obviously up to you. And you're allowed to freely practice what you think is morally, good. And you should leave what you think is morally a sin. That's a completely personal thing. But when it comes to laws, you have to, a Muslim is, this is made very clear that you have to follow the laws of the countries you live in. So, for example, if marrying more than one wives is bigotry, then I'm sorry, but I don't care. Islam doesn't care that Islam has allowed you to marry more than one wives at a time. But that country in which you're living, it doesn't allow it, so you cannot do it. And anyway, in Islam too, you are not allowed to just marry more than one wives without fulfilling certain conditions. And it is very clearly mentioned that if you do not fulfill those conditions, then that marriage is not accepted. And yet there are so many people who do not fulfill those conditions, but they think that they're still allowed to marry more than one wives at the same time. But no, actually, you're going to be punished for that, like it or not. Again, as I said, like it or not, but you are going to be held responsible for that by God, because this is very clearly mentioned that you can only take more than one wives when you fulfill these certain conditions. And in any way, in so many ways, countries that have not allowed second marriages have sort of made it even easier for you to follow the Islamic conditions, because you cannot in any case fulfill those conditions. So why would you want to go and embark upon the mission of getting married to more than one people? So if it's considered bigotry, oh sorry, why am I saying bigotry again and again though? Sorry, it's bigamy. Seriously, okay, this is the one thing that I really get peed off, is that whenever I do a podcast nowadays, especially, I seem to always say the wrong words, and I always end up putting a correction in the description. But I mean, the other thing that worries me is that I'm putting the correction in the description, but I don't know how many people are actually reading the description, But anyway, I'm sorry. So yeah, I'm talking about bigamy, not bigotry. So yeah, if in the country, it's considered bigamy, then that's it. You cannot marry, okay? You're with one wife, and that's enough. Fulfill all her rights and fulfill all your responsibilities towards her, and that in itself is more than enough. You cannot go against that law, basically, is what Islam is also telling you. Okay? So similarly, if there's a law in a country that states that you need to follow family planning, for example, you cannot go and tell them that, oh no, because in Islam I'm allowed to have as many children as I want, then, no, because you know what? Guess what? Even in Islam, family planning is a concept. In fact, in the times of Hazur Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, family planning was practiced. Again, See, these are the little things that you need to know. And the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, family planning was practiced. Family planning is basically planning carefully on how many children you want to have, what year gaps you want to have between each child, how you're going to take care of the expenses, the finances, in order to have a very peaceful, smooth, a very, very smooth running, you can say, system within your family without entering into any financial crisis. Okay. So, how to better run your family, how to better run the expenses, how to have a smooth life, how to be able to give your family everything that you can in your capacity. So, to be able to plan that before you actually produce children, to be able to see how many children you really can afford, to be able to see how you can plan your children's future, because in Islam, parenting is basically a huge responsibility. It is where God has designated a bit of his power towards you to see that, okay, you take care of my people. I'm sending my people to the world. I'm sending them through you. And in that way, I'm giving you responsibility to take care of my people. Now, let me see what you do. And you see, this is where parents always go wrong, because again, our ancient culture kicks up and we think that, oh, we're giving birth to these children, we own them. There are properties, there are assets. And because we've basically created them, we have the right to dictate their lives, and we have the right to be. No, you see, this is exactly where you're going wrong. This is exactly where God is testing you and where you're failing. You have to remember, number one, you don't own these children, because God is literally sending them through you. He's using you as a means to send more people to this world. Okay, but he's given you the responsibility to take care of them and to make them capable enough that they can live their own lives on their own. They can stand independent, be they female or male. Okay, and then this will move on now to the next point, because now I'll talk about marriage and finances and economy, although it may not make sense that I'm moving to this point. But before I forget, because this is essentially why I picked up the podcast, because so many things were coming in mind. But this was something I really needed to touch upon once again after a very long time. And this is the concept that people seem to have of joint accounts. Yeah, sorry, but you know what? Although again, Islam doesn't dictate anything, and this is again left upon your common sense and discretion, but there is no real concept of joint accounts, even in Islam. In Islam, we are told to take care of our finances. We're told to be independent, right? We're told that we have no right to tell the other person how to deal with his money. So this culture again that we have, in which husbands think that they have the right to tell their wives how to invest their money and where to put their money, and how they think that it's okay if their wives are contributing to the house finances and all. And there are so many religious scholars now who have said, oh, given the economic conditions, there's nothing wrong with. Yeah, but you see, that's the thing. Now suddenly you remember to be very modern, and now suddenly you remember that, oh, now you remember common sense. Now you remember practicality of life. Now you remember what makes life easier. Yeah, but you see, again, in Islam, it's very clear. What a man earns, it belongs to his wife and his family, right? But what a woman earns, it belongs only to her. Okay? Because it's the man's responsibility to run the house. It is his responsibility to take care of his kids. It is his responsibility to take care of the house. It's not the woman's responsibility, by the way. This is a Christian concept, and I don't even know why it's a Christian concept. I think they just made it on their own, because I doubt that even actual Christianity even touched upon this subject. But Islam has touched upon this subject in great detail. Okay, the Prophet said that even if a woman places a dish in its right place, this is considered as a huge favor. because she doesn't even have to do that. Now imagine she doesn't even have to do that, but we, because our pagan culture has always thought that it is a woman's job to take care of the house, so we think we always try to, justify uh people's expectations, for example, for their towards their daughter-in-laws, or towards their daughters, or towards their sister-in-laws, or towards their, that, oh, they should take care. No, it's not the daughter-in-law's job to take care of her mother-in-law and father-in-law. It's the son's job to take care of his parents, right? Similarly, there is no concept of joint family system in Islam for so many reasons. The most basic reason being that a woman needs to have her own personal space, because the whole point of a parda collapses in a joint family system. And the Prophet very clearly mentioned it, that that even the brother-in-law, who is the biological brother of her husband, even he has no right to share a house, or to even enter upon the place where the woman is, that it is like death, right? He says it is like death. Now imagine that even your biological brother, it is like death for him to enter upon a place where your wife is, right? What does that tell you? It tells you there is absolutely no place for joint family system in Islam. But in our culture, we're always justifying a joint family system, because basically the truth is that parents just want to hold on to their children, which is again against Islam. Why do you want to? If you want to hold on to your children, don't get them married, please. Because again, marriage is not compulsory in Islam. Education is, awareness is. Okay, marriage isn't. Don't get them married if you're not ready to let them go. This I know nobody with any common sense or nobody with any actual knowledge of Islam can understand this. That why is it that women, especially, or even men, I mean, why is it that parents cannot let go of their sons? Again, because you actually literally believe that you possess them, believe it or not, like it or not, but your true psychology, your acts, which are speaking louder than words, they suggest that you literally do believe that you own the person, that you possess the person, and that so what if he gets married, he has to be completely under your control. And this is the main cause of divorces, apart from other causes. But I mean, if you look at one of the root causes of divorces, it's because parents are not giving space. They're not accepting the fact that their children who are now married are supposed to be living their own lives. And it's very funny because these same parents have been living their own lives. That's what I find really, really funny. That it's weird how the parents who create the biggest fuss regarding their married children and regarding controlling their lives are those who themselves actually didn't didn't live with their own in-laws. They're those who enjoyed lives away from their own families. They enjoyed independent lives, but they are forcing their kids to live in the same house as theirs, and they're trying to control their lives. That I find that the most ironic thing ever. So again, coming back to this joint account thing, to each his own finances, okay? I personally do not like the concept of joint accounts. So whenever spouses, they open joint accounts, my biggest problem here is why? Why? I mean, I think if the husband is earning, if the wife is earning, they should have their own separate accounts. Fine, they can join their money towards buying something or towards, the house if needed, but they should have their own separate accounts. And you know what? If you talk to any bank or any financial expert, any accountant, they will all tell you the same. Because even legally speaking, for example, you can't even use your spouse's credit card or debit card, right? Why? Why? I mean, because at the end of the day, when it comes to money, money is something that in which even in Islam, the Prophet always says that you must keep your accounts clear. No matter who you're working with, or no matter who you're having these accounts with, no matter who you're exchanging money with, you must keep your accounts clear. And believe me, it helps a lot in the long run. Now, for example, the reason I'm touching upon this is that, for example, nowadays, especially not in Muslim countries, because in Muslim countries the law is very clear when it comes to divorce and settlement of property. But in other countries, even though they started their laws on division of property based on the Islamic concept, but they have kind of gone a bit too far off, where now they have, in many countries, they have decided that it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, but whenever you get a divorce, so for example, if the woman is earning, if all the earning belongs to the woman, for example, the man will still be entitled to half the property, which is actually wrong. It is wrong Islamically. In Islam, this can never happen. A man is never entitled to the woman's property. A woman is entitled to a part of the man's property that can go towards her meher or compensation, for example, right? It goes towards alimony, basically. So, but a man is in no way entitled to anything of the woman's after a divorce. The only thing he's entitled to is if she chooses to give him back the hak meher that he gives her upon just before consummation of marriage, basically, right? So if she, if she chooses to divorce him, then only, not if he divorces her. If she chooses to divorce him, then he has the right to consider asking for that hak meher back, right? But again, he is discouraged, by the way. At the same time, he is discouraged to do so. Similarly, if there has been exchange of gifts, for example, so yes, then in Islam, there is this concept that, okay, you can return those things to each other. Just return everything to each other and go your own separate ways, right? But division of property like this is not in Islam. In Islam, there is a certain percentage only, and that, even as I said, is only in this form. But for a woman, she cannot give any of her earnings, any of her property to the man. If the it doesn't matter who divorces who, by the way. Okay, so this is where I feel that the other countries have gone way off the mark, because even in those countries, actually, as I said, they built this concept upon the Islamic concept of alimony. But see, the point is, the reason why after divorce women were entitled to get a percentage or half of the property was because it was proved that, you see, even though they worked their asses off as housewives, or even if they contributed as wives and as mothers and all, and that they've spent their whole youth with that person, and that person suddenly ups and divorces them for no reason, and so yes, they're entitled to, because it is said that they have had a hand. I mean, after all, they made it possible for the man to continue earning, right? Which is understandable. Again, after, even in their case, there's a certain amount of years that you have had as a married couple in order to make that claim, right? But again, I would say this would make sense if you put it this way, that they brought in I would say they brought in the Islamic spirit in this sense, because as I said, in Islam, even a woman is not supposed to, she's not obliged to take care of her kids. She's not obliged to take care of her home. She's not obliged to be a housewife and move around and clean the house and wash the dishes and cook the food and all. No, this is actually the husband's responsibility in Islam. It's not the wife's responsibility. As the Prophet said, your wife is the queen. She's the queen of your life. She's the queen of your house. You must treat her like a queen. And he has also said that, you have to provide for her. And literally, you have to pay her. Even if she's taking care of your kids, you have to pay her. And if she's taking care of your house, it's a favor that she's doing to you. So the least you can do is to show her respect. So if you put that spirit, that Islamic spirit in, and then you understand this law that the West and other countries decided to, manifest in the form of saying that, okay, yeah, you know what, the woman has been taking care of your house, she's been taking care of your kids, she's been taking care of anything, and now you suddenly up and divorce her. You can't leave her penniless. She is entitled to a part of your property. Get it? But now, in the case where a husband and wife are both earning, this is very clear that no matter what, as I said before, in Islam, because there is no such partition of property, because the husband has to have given her a hak meher in any case in the beginning of the marriage, which is essentially her financial fallback, her financial safety net. So if the husband has not given her that hak meher, and and then he suddenly, if he divorces her, she still has the right to ask for that hak meher. Then, by the way, yes, she has the right to ask for that hak meher, as her, as that is her right. That is her right to a part of his property. In other words, so that is her hak meher, right? But again, but whatever she's, and if they have kids, then she has the right to child support after divorce. So he must pay for his children, he must pay child support. And if he doesn't, then he has no legal claims on his children either, by the way. Yes, even in Islam. If he does not contribute towards his children's well being, towards their education, towards bringing them up, if he does not financially support them, then he has no rights on them. They will continue to have rights on him forever. They can demand their inheritance, they can demand whatever, but he has no rights, he has no claims. He has no custodial rights, he has no claims whatsoever as father. But if there are no kids in the picture, then he is still obliged to give her her hak meher if he hasn't yet given her that. Right? And they should return each other whatever it is that they've given each other in the form of gifts if they want to. If they don't want to, that's just as fine. Okay, so it's actually very easy. There's no mess here. But the reason actually why in the West and in other countries also they started this division of property was to stop people from treating marriage as a joke and to stop them from just running for divorce, which in Islam actually it was stopped in this way, that in Islam, when a man talks about divorce for the first time, he can reconcile without any repercussions. When he does it for a second time, there is a punishment and then reconcile. And then when he says divorce for a third time, and these have to be at 3 intervals. If you say divorce, divorce, divorce in one sitting, that's not divorce. That is just the first divorce. That is the first time that you've dared to hurt your wife by talking about divorce. But you can, be forgiven. If she wants to forgive you, you can be forgiven and you can reconcile. The second time, you cannot reconcile without punishment. You go through a punishment, then you reconcile. The third time is the last time. And after that, there is no reconciliation. There is nothing. And if you want to get married again to her, you have to go through the hell of watching her get married to somebody else, live with that person properly, and then only and only if those two mutually agree to divorce each other, and if she again agrees to marry you, then only can she marry you. This is your punishment as a man, right? Because in Islam, God knows how small man is, how petty man is. So this is a very huge punishment for him to see his wife with another man before he can reclaim his wife again. And that even he cannot just reclaim her again. If she and that man choose to divorce each other again, and then if she chooses to come back to you, then you can marry her again. But if the wife decides to divorce the husband, now that's another thing that needs to be very clear. If the wife chooses to divorce the husband in Islam, then it is done in one sitting. She can walk out of the house if she wants to, and it is considered a done deal. Negotiations can still go on if she wants. Reconciliation can go on if she wants. She doesn't have to marry somebody else in order to reconcile and remarry her husband. There is no punishment for her on that, because Islam understands that a woman does not easily walk out on her family. She does not make these decisions rashly. It is the man's petty egotism that makes him make such decisions rashly and impulsively and stupidly. But Islam is aware of the fact that women think 100,000 times before they take that step. So never belittle a woman's decision for divorce. If she has decided to divorce, Islam respects that to this extent, that there is no difficulty laid down for her. If she decides to divorce that person then and there and walk out, it is done. If she wants to negotiate and reconcile, it is fine. Okay, so this is the difference between a woman divorcing a man and a man divorcing a woman in Islam. You can see the importance and the privilege given to women in Islam just by this, just from this small or huge act of divorce, of who can divorce whom, how, and in what way. And again, there is no requirement for the woman to give anything to the man if she decides to divorce him. In fact, the man, if he wants his haq meher back, he is kind of discouraged in Islam, because at the end of the day, she spent time, she spent years, and if she's decided to divorce him, and if she wants to keep the haq meher, then yes. But the man does have the right to ask for his haq meher too, but he's discouraged to do so. Just like how a woman is actually discouraged from revoking her right to haq meher, by the way. In Islam, it is very clear that a woman should demand her haq meher before consummation of marriage. She must have her haq meher, and it must be a valid amount, an amount that she agrees to wholeheartedly. And if she chooses to forfeit the haq meher, she has the right to, but Islam strongly discourages her to, which is why, again, she can ask for it upon divorce. Yes, if it's not given, then upon divorce, she has the right to ask for it as punishment, or as her, again, it's her right, her entitlement. So this is how it is. Actually, in Islam, it's very smooth. It's very, again, based on common sense. You cannot ask a woman to give half of her property to you, of her earnings. In fact, you have no right to her earnings even as you're married to her. And if she chooses to contribute towards the house with her money, this is still considered her favor and her generosity. It is not her duty. It is not her right. And you still do not have any right to expect it of her, no matter what the economic situation, by the way. So yeah, if by mutual understanding, you and your wife do agree to contribute towards the house, it's fine. I mean, it's fine. It's fine. But understand that no matter how dire the situation, she's not obliged to do so. It's not your right to expect it of her, and it is not her duty to contribute. It's 100% yours. This is why in Islam, again, marriage is supposed to be very carefully considered, very carefully done. It's not a game of dolls, okay? Which our parents seem to forget when they get excited and they try to force their kids to get married. Then they suddenly seem to forget that when their children want to get married, then they keep on reminding them it's not a joke, it's not a game. But when they want their children to get married, then to them it suddenly is a joke and it is a game. Because then they just look at the society and they want to please the society, and they want to, basically prove to the society that their children are not lacking in any way, or they are not lacking as parents in any way. So they just force their kids to get married. No, in Islam, this is exactly where you get punished, by the way. Yes. So these are again, as I said, these are common sense. These are little things that are based on common sense, which I don't understand why people are making such a big deal. It's like another thing, there's this trend that started a few years ago where everybody suddenly decided that, what, if you say khuda hafiz, then it's actually, as Muslims, you should say Allah hafiz, because are you trying to actually say that actually there is a concept where khuda can be anybody apart from Allah? Is that what you're trying to say? Because again, I would say it's the same thing about paintings and pictures and all. As Muslims, what is the whole point of being a Muslim? As a Muslim, our belief is monotheism, right? We believe that there is only one God and there is no other God. We don't see any other thing as God. We only see God as God, right? then tell me, pray tell me, why is it that you think that saying khuda hafiz can have any other meaning or intention? So it's always better to say Allah hafiz. Listen, Allah has 99 names, and Allah is one of those 99 names. Khuda is his being. Khuda means God. The name of God is Allah. So tell me again, why does it matter if I say Khuda Hafiz or Allah Hafiz? It doesn't matter. Believe me, I don't care what logic you bring. I don't care how you try to put it. I don't care what entanglements you try to bring here. But please spare yourself the ignorance. Because again, as I said, as a Muslim, actions are judged by intentions, right? What are our intentions when we say Khuda Hafiz? Who do we think about when we say the word Khuda? Who said all of a sudden, I mean, who came up with this bright idea all of a sudden a few years ago that, oh, you know what, it's actually wrong, and it can be, ambiguous. Why is it ambiguous? As a Muslim, it means you shouldn't say God in English too, right? Because Khuda is literally the translation for the word God. God in English, Khuda in Urdu and Persian. So, just please tell me, why is it that saying God all of a sudden can be ambiguous? Are you trying to say that if we say God, then we're accepting the fact that there could be other gods apart from him? Are you crazy? Are you insane? As a Muslim, when we say God, we're talking about only God, just God himself. Just by calling him Allah doesn't make it, clear that we're talking about God. God is God to us as Muslims. As Muslims, there is just God, and his name is Allah. So if you tell somebody, may God protect you, and if you tell somebody, may Allah protect you, why are they different? They're not. It's the same thing. God is what he is, and Allah is his name. Just like how we are human beings. I am a woman. You understand? A human being, a female, is what I am, and my name is my name. But calling me a female or calling me a human being is not going to make it ambiguous as to who you're talking about. Because at the end, you're talking about me as you're talking about my being, as in what I am, right? You're referring to my species, right? So when we're saying God, we're referring to his being. We're referring to who or what he is, okay? And Allah is one of his names. When he says he has 99 names, call him from any other name then. If it means if you suddenly call him from another name, he's not going to be Allah. He's still going to be Allah, right? If you call him Ar-Rahman, he's not Allah. If you call him Al-Rahim, he's not Allah. If you call him by any other name than Allah, that means he's not Allah. For God's sake, please use your common sense. These are the things that really get to me sometimes when I'm thinking, what is wrong with people? Seriously. No, that I'm not saying you shouldn't say Allah Hafiz. Go ahead and say Allah Hafiz, but don't try to tell other people that, oh, you should stop saying Khuda Hafiz. You should say, I will damn well continue to say Khuda Hafiz because I know very clearly in my mind who I'm talking about when I say Khuda Hafiz. The whole world used to say Khuda Hafiz until just a few years ago when suddenly they decided, no, it's better to say Allah. Okay, it's better. Okay, fine. You feel better. Go for it. But believe me, it doesn't make a difference because God is just God. It doesn't matter what name you call him from or through or for. He's still God, right? A rose by any other name is still a rose, right? God by any other name is still God. Seriously, please, people. Let's not leave common sense because Islam is all about common sense. Well, these are just a few things that have been bugging me for decades now. And I hope I've cleared them. So remember, not a big fan of joint accounts. I would strongly suggest that if you really want to be in pure harmony as a couple, keep your accounts separate, believe me. Legally too, it is preferred, by the way, even if you look at it by law. Your money should be kept separately. You can maybe put a certain amount of money that you feel need to be put in a joint account to the both of you, yes, but other than that, please, women, keep a separate account of your earnings, okay? Believe me, it will save you a world of tension, a world of tension, okay? And, you know, when it comes to other countries, all I can say is that you've taken the division of assets too far. The division of assets, again, where was put into law to stop the joke that was made out of a divorce, to stop people from just, moving in and out of the courts, you know, pressing on marriages and divorces and all. So they try to make it very difficult for people so that they should think 1,000 times before they get married, and then they should think 1,000,000 times before they get divorced, right? So, but they've taken it too far by now saying that, oh, it means division of assets goes both ways. Yeah, it doesn't. In Islam, it never did in any way. The division of assets never went that way in any case, as I said very clearly. Uh, and women, in any case, any money that a woman spends on the house, on the children, on her husband, yeah, that's considered a favor in Islam. That's considered her generosity, in other words. Okay, don't call it a favor, call it generosity. And whatever the man earns, it belongs to his family. But whatever a woman earns, it belongs solely to herself. And even the haq meher that the man gives her, that belongs solely to her. And she can do whatever she wants with it. She can invest it. She can, buy property with it. It can be in the form of a property, by the way. The haq meher, if not given in the form of cash, can be given in the form of property. If she wants, it can be in the form of jewelry. If she wants, it can be in any form that she wants. If it's in the form of cash, she can build it into an empire, even. What I'm trying to say, yeah, I think I should make this very clear. She can use that haq meher to build a whole empire if she wants to, and her husband will still not have a right to a single penny, to whatever wealth she decides to multiply using her haq meher. That's the point I'm trying to make, and I hope I've made that very clear here now. So, yeah, that's not how it works in Islam. So, well, this is me signing out. Khuda hafiz.